Breaking news, leading Putin nowhere. Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated at his annual press conference that he will not be prepared to negotiate a peace settlement with Ukraine until he has accomplished his goals, which remain unchanged since he began his full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022. Both demilitarization, under Russian military and security control of Ukrainian territory, and denazification, under Russian political control of Ukraine, are goals of his. That is to say, Russia would swallow up Ukraine to the point where the country stops existing as a separate entity. For as long as the Russian Empire has controlled those territories that make up Ukraine, Putin has insisted that there is no historical basis for the country. However, the same cannot be said of most European countries in the modern day. A large number of them were formerly subjects of the Russian, Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, or Wilhelmine empires. Worldwide, most of the 193 member states of the UN only achieved independence in the decades following World War II. A lot of the countries that exist today didn't even exist in people's minds during the time that Putin is worried about. Putin sees the decline of empires as a major obstacle. He can't seem to get his head around the fact that we're in the modern era of nation-states, with a global order based on the UN Charter's principle of territorial integrity, which forbids the forcible redelimitation of national borders. His fantasies instead involve re-establishing the Russian Empire through the conquest of neighboring countries like Belarus and Ukraine. Putin evidently thought Ukraine would capitulate rapidly when he began his conquest war. The plan all along was to remove Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and replace him with a Russian puppet government in a matter of weeks. However, that strategy was a resounding failure. The people of Ukraine, and the military in particular, stood firm against the would-be Tsar. In contrast, the Ukrainian people banded together in a fierce resistance, which allowed them to hold on to their capital and reclaim about half of the land that Russia's armies had seized. The Black Sea Fleet of Russia has been rendered ineffective by Ukraine's missile and drone attacks, and the country's air defenses have successfully established a virtual no-fly zone over it. What really matters is the strong morale and resolve of the Ukrainian people to protect their country, even though Western financial aid and military supplies have been indispensable to Ukraine's defense. Putin needs to convince the Russian people that winning the war isn't an impossible dream before March, when Russia holds its presidential election. He has escalated repression of opposition to levels not seen since the Soviet era, mobilized 400,000 troops, and placed Russia's economy on a war footing. None of that, though, will help him win the war. No significant advances against Ukrainian defensive lines have been made by his severely wounded army. He is holding out hope that the Ukrainian people's resolve to fight will weaken and that war fatigue will set in the US and Europe. His forces will be able to advance, incarcerating, deporting, or even killing anyone who still fights once the Western military and financial support dries up, which will cause Ukrainian morale to evaporate. Yet Putin is utterly mistaken if he believes this situation would lead to peace. During the first invasion, his advancing armies committed mass atrocities. They would repeat the crime. But these atrocities, along with the influx of millions of additional Ukrainian refugees to the West, would strengthen European political resolve. The reactions of European governments are hard to foresee, but they would never aim to end hostilities with Russia. It is more probable that a wider and longer war will break out, with Europe's economic and industrial might deciding the fate of the conflict regardless of how the United States feels about it. Putin will not be able to win the war he initiated, to put it bluntly. Only after his downfall, after the Ukrainians, with Western assistance, have successfully defended themselves, and after the Russians realize that Putin's mad war has endangered their own futures, will peace be restored. When that will happen is completely unpredictable. Since he hasn't been militarily vanquished just yet, Putin appears content for the time being. Despite the fact that his war effort is falling far short of any of his declared objectives, he is attempting to project an air of self-assurance. There is a limit to how long this performance can continue. What he has done to Russia is going to become a painful reality check for the country. At some point, Russia will begin to prioritize its own future as an independent nation-state among other independent nation-states, such as Ukraine and Belarus, once Putin's neo-imperial illusion is finally dispelled. Then and only then can we even begin to discuss peace.